So should we start?
Yes, sir. Should I start, sir?
Just one second. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 17F, which is Hematology Malignant Myeloid Disorder. We are streaming live from MMI MSR Ambala via Kolkata. A very interesting topic, chronic myeloid leukemia, more than just microscopy. This is the session 1. And to speak on that, we have Dr. Ariba Zaidi. She is an MBBS and MD pathology from PGI Chandigarh. Presently, she is an assistant professor in MMI MSR Maulana Ambala with areas of interest in hematology, lymphoma, breast pathology, and soft tissue tumors, with multiple publications in national and international journals, multiple presentations in national conferences with awards. Before I ask Dr. Zaidi to start, let me request all of you to please keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request Dr. Zaidi, ma'am, please share your screen and let's start.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. The topic which I am going to discuss is chronic myeloid leukemia, more than just microscopy. This is session 1. Sorry, there is some...
No issues, please. No problem.
So, WHO 2017 has seen many changes as compared to the previous editions. So, the myeloproliferative neoplasms in 2017 do not include mastocytosis, and the term chronic myelogenous leukemia has been changed to chronic myeloid leukemia, which is BCR-ABL1 positive. So, what is chronic myeloid leukemia? It is a myeloproliferative neoplasm which originates in an abnormal pluripotent bone marrow stem cell, and the most consistent feature of this disease is translocation 922, which results in BCR-ABL1 fusion gene located in Philadelphia chromosome, that is chromosome number 22. Coming to the epidemiology of this disease, it comprises of 15 to 20% of all the leukemias, and world annual incidence ranges between 1 to 2 cases per 1 lakh. It can occur at any age, however, the median age of diagnosis is 5 to 6 decades, which is Western data. In India, the median age of onset is between 38 to 40 years as compared to the 50 years in the West. It has a slightly male preponderance. What is the pathogenesis of chronic myeloid leukemia? So, the main pathogenetic mechanism is the formation of the Philadelphia chromosome, which is nothing else but a shortened chromosome 22, resulting due to the reciprocal exchange of DNA between the long arms of chromosome number 22 and chromosome number 9. The break occurs at position Q34 in chromosome 9 and Q11 in chromosome number 22, results in the generation of BCR-ABL1 transcript. So, what is BCR gene? It is a gene located on long arm of chromosome number 22, and it encodes for a 160 kilodalton serine threonine kinase enzyme. It has several functional activities such as autophosphorylation, transphosphorylation of several proteins, and it is common in all the BCR-ABL fusion proteins. It potentiates the tyrosine kinase activity of ABL when they are fused. ABL1 gene is a human homologue of viral ABL oncogene carried by Abelson-Murine leukemia virus, and it expresses 145 kilodalton protein, which has a tyrosine kinase enzyme activity, and it can shuttle between nucleus and cytoplasm. Within the nucleus, it binds to DNA and results in regulation of the cell cycle. It promotes apoptosis and apoptosis of the cells which has undergone any DNA damage, In the cytoplasm, they result in signaling and cytoskeletal molding. The normal ABL phosphorylation is very tightly controlled. However, the loss of this region results in high constitutive enzymatic activity of this protein. So this is the figure which shows the BCR-ABL transcript that is generated by the translocation between the exons of ABL and BCR. The breakpoint in the ABL remains constant at A2 exon, whereas it may vary in the BCR gene. The most common transcript which is generated is P210, which results due to the major breakpoint cluster region spanning between the E12 to E16, which was previously known as B1 to B6, resulting in transcript P210. The other transcripts that can be generated are P190, that results in the breakpoint at E1, and P230, which results due to the breakpoint between E17 to E20, mostly at E19. So the different transcripts that are generated, most common being the P210, affects the phenotypic appearance of the chronic myeloid leukemia. For example, if the transcript is P190, then that patients may manifest more percentage of monocytosis, and this transcript is also seen in Philadelphia positive acute leukemias. And P230 results in CML having prominent granulocytic maturation and conspicuous thrombocytosis. So coming to biology of BCR-ABL, these proteins are pleiotropic molecules with many similar activities. They are responsible for development of chronic phase of CML because of their effect on DNA repair process mechanism, resulting in genomic instability and hence disease progression. This chart summarizes the effects of P210 on the various biological processes resulting in the development of disease. So the various mechanisms through which the BCR-ABL transcripts act is the phosphorylation of a cascade of proteins and enzymes such as JAK-STAT pathway, RAS-RAF pathways, and then affecting the cytoskeletal proteins causing their phosphorylation, PI3K pathways affecting the phosphorylation of subsequent proteins, affecting the apoptotic proteins, resulting in increased amount of transcription in the nucleus, and ultimately resulting in genomics instability and progression of the cell cycle, inhibition of apoptosis, and generation of CML. So, how does it act through RAS signaling? They execute the transforming capabilities at least in some part via RAS pathway, which is a vital protein in intracellular signaling pathway. The mechanism by which BCR-ABL interact with RAS are very complex, and they include a various number of adapter and docking proteins. Also, CML is characterized by premature release of bone marrow progenitor cells, which is thought to be mediated through various adhesion molecules because they cause alteration in the cytoskeletal structure with subsequent release of the bone marrow progenitor cells into the periphery. BCR-ABL also affects the programmed cell death by modulating the anti-apoptotic genes such as BCL2 and pro-apoptotic proteins such as DART. They also affect the growth factor independence as they can affect the various pathways such as intracellular signaling molecules. They interact with the growth factor receptors such as interleukin-3 and also enhance various growth factors themselves. This BCR-ABL also affects the DNA repair mechanism, such as it can interact with xeroderma pigmentosum gene product and increases the radiosensitivity. The altered DNA repair may lead to subtle genetic errors, which may manifest as clonal evolution and progression to blast phase. Coming to the clinical presentation of CML, these patients present with history of weight loss, fatigue, abdominal fullness, and easy bruising, abdominal pain, and fever. On examination, we will find splenomegaly, external tenderness, lymphadenopathy, hepatomegaly, and purpura, sometimes retinal hemorrhage also. The various phases of chronic myeloid leukemia can be divided as chronic phase, accelerated phase, and blast phase, depending on the hematological manifestations of this disease. So, in case of chronic phase, on periphery we will have leukocytosis ranging between 12,000 to up to it can be 10 lakh. We see in the periphery as well as in the marrow various stages of maturation of the granulocytic series along with hypersegmented polymorphs. There would be basophilia, however there will be no significant dysplasia. Blast count in chronic phase usually is less than 2%. Monocytes is also low. And platelets range between, they can be sometimes normal to as high as 10 lakh, and thrombocytopenia is really very uncommon. Also, the leukocyte alkaline phosphatase score is reduced in cases of CML, which helps us to differentiate it from other conditions such as leukemia reaction, where we can get very high lab score and differentiate it from CML. On bone marrow aspirate, we find hypercellularity, mostly comprising of granulocytic proliferation with maturation pattern similar to that of the blood. We also see pseudo-Gaucher cell, C-blue histiocytes, which is due to the increased cell turnover, and there will be significantly reduced isolated macrophages. This is a bone marrow aspirate microphotograph, which is showing presence of increased amount of granulocytic cells with this insert showing pseudo-Gaucher cell and C-blue histiocytes. On biopsy, we see hypercellularity with predominance of granulocytic series. There will be paratrabecular immature granulocyte cell thickness will be increased between 5 to cell thick, which is normally between 2 to 3 cell thick only. Blasts will be less than 5%. Erythroid precursors will be reduced in size, in number. The megakaryocytes will be hypolobated forms are seen, and they are normally increased in number, but they can be normal also. So, in 30% of the cases, moderate to marked increased amount of reticulin fibrosis can be seen in cases of CML. This is a microphotograph which is showing the granulocytic hyperplasia with presence of these dwarf or monolobated megakaryocytes. There is megakaryocytic hyperplasia as seen over here. What are the differential diagnoses of the chronic myeloid leukemia? This could be chronic myelomonocytic leukemia, where the monocytic percentage is usually high and with evidence of dysplasia. Juvenile myelomonocytic leukemia can also be one of the DD, but it occurs usually in children less than 3 years. Monocyte count will be high. There will be other features such as elevated hemoglobin F and monosomy 7. Then we have another entity, atypical CML, which is now classified under MDS MPN category, and it does not have BCR-ABL positivity. It is seen in older patients. It represents more of a dysplastic picture with cytopenias. Basophilia is not prominent in this condition, and there will be dysplasia in this condition. The other differential diagnoses are leukemia reaction, GCSF therapy, the chronic neutrophilic leukemia, BCR-ABL negative myeloproliferative neoplasm, including essential thrombocytosis, polycythemia vera, and primary myelofibrosis. All these entities we will be discussing in our next session. Next we come to the accelerated phase of the chronic myeloid leukemia. This is the defining criteria of accelerated phase. How do we say that the patient has gone into accelerated phase or has presented with an accelerated phase? Then the WBC count is more than 10,000, which is unresponsive to therapy. There is persistent or increasing splenomegaly, which is unresponsive to therapy. Then also thrombocytopenia more than 10 lakh, unresponsive to therapy, or persistent thrombocytopenia, which is not related to the therapy, that is not occurring due to the therapy. Basophil count more than 20%, blast ranging between 10 to 19%. Additional clonal abnormalities in Philadelphia chromosome at the time of diagnosis, which includes major root abnormalities such as second Philadelphia, or trisomy 8, isochromosome 17q, trisomy 19, complex karyotyping, or abnormalities of 3q2 cell. Any new chromosomal abnormality of Ph positive cell that occurs during therapy also indicates an accelerated phase. Provisional response to TKI, hematological response to first-line TKIs or any hematological, cytogenetic or molecular indication of resistance to two sequential TKIs, occurrence of two or more mutations in BCR-ABL fusion gene during TKI therapy also indicate an accelerated phase. So this is a microphotograph that shows presence of blast in the periphery in a case of accelerated phase chronic myeloid leukemia. Here the point which has to be remembered is that if we find out that the blast in the blood or marrow is the lymphoblast, then even the less than 10% should also prompt a concern for a lymphoblastic transformation in these cases, and further investigation should be done. Also, on bone marrow biopsy, if we are finding large clusters or sheets of small abnormal megakaryocytes along with marked radiculin or collagen fibrosis in biopsy specimen, then also we should presume a diagnosis of accelerated phase. Next, coming to the blast phase, here the blast count raises above 20%, or there is extramedullary blast proliferation. Large aggregates of clusters of blasts are found in bone marrow biopsy. Mostly, in 70% of the cases, the blasts are of myeloid lineage, but in 20 to 30% cases, it could be lymphoid also. So, the transformation of chronic phase to accelerated phase or to blast phase is not always in systematic fashion, and any of them can appear first. So, unexplained fever, anemia, thrombocytopenia, splenomegaly, or sudden enlargement of the lymph node should prompt us to think about blast phase. Lymph nodes are the most common site for localized blast crisis. So, this figure is just a diagrammatic representation of how from normal to progression of a chronic phase CML, then followed by a blast phase. Initially, there is genomic instability with resulting in increased proliferation of granulocytic cells. Further point mutations and chromosomal abnormalities result in decreased differentiation, increased amount of cell cycle, decreased apoptosis results in blast transformation. So the chromosomal abnormalities and mutation in CML blast phase which can be found are listed here in this table, which could be a double Philadelphia chromosome or a trisomy chromosome 8, isochrome 17q, trisomy 19, translocation 321, or the molecular alterations such as p53 mutation, p16 mutation, RB or RAS mutations. This is a panel photograph which is showing myeloid blast phase positive for MPO stain, and lymphoid blast phase which is showing block positivity on PST. Various scoring systems have been described in history for assessing a condition of a patient in a CML chronic phase. So one of them is SOCAL scoring system, which includes age, spleen size, circulating blast, platelet count, etc. Another one is HASFORD. The third one is a UTOL scoring system, which includes the percentage. This is for the patients who are on imatinib. Percentage of the basophils in blood and spleen size is used as assessment. So coming to the diagnosis and initial workup, first of all, we have to clinically evaluate the patient and followed by performing the various lab tests and molecular and genetic studies. The most important in chronic myeloid leukemia now is molecular and cytogenetic studies, because we have to demonstrate the presence of this Philadelphia chromosome to establish a diagnosis of CML and to exclude other differential diagnoses. The three genetic methods currently used are: number one is the conventional cytogenetic karyotyping, second is the fluorescence in situ hybridization, and third one is the reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, that is RT-PCR. It is mandatory that we have to evaluate the translocation of 922. That has to be performed in all the cases of suspected myeloproliferative neoplasms or MDS, MPN cases, because we have to exclude CML for the establishment of these diagnoses according to the WHO criteria. So the first one is the conventional cytogenetics. It is a technique that has led to the identification of Philadelphia chromosome in CML patients. In 95% of the patients, the BCR-ABL gene will be evident as Philadelphia chromosome. But there are few cases where we can miss this Philadelphia chromosome on conventional cytogenetics. That is either due to a cryptic translocation or a very small translocation which can be missed on this cytogenetics, conventional cytogenetics. The advantage is that we will see the entire chromosomal complement can be evaluated and we can see the presence of any additional abnormalities to Philadelphia chromosome. Disadvantage is that it has a limited sensitivity and it requires dividing cells. Karyotypic analysis is usually best performed from the bone marrow material but also can be done on peripheral blood. In typical conventional cytogenetic study, 20 manifests are examined. Approximately 5% cases can be Philadelphia negative on conventional cytogenetics because of a cryptic or a submicroscopic BCR rearrangements. These cases require FISH or molecular testing. Coming to the fluorescent in situ hybridization, where we use fluorescent DNA probes to label BCR and ABL genetic regions adjacent to the translocation breakpoint. Typically, ABL1 is labeled by red and BCR is labeled by green fluorescence. We identify both BCR ABL on the Philadelphia chromosome as well as ABL1 BCR fusion signal on the derivative chromosome 9. So the advantage of this technique is that it is fast. It can be used on non-dividing cell. It has a low positive and low false positive and negative rates. It has a higher sensitivity and no metaphysics is needed. It can detect a submicroscopic or cryptic molecular alteration also, which can be missed by standard cytogenetics. So what are the disadvantages? It does not detect clonal cytogenetic abnormality in Philadelphia cells, and the status of a remainder of chromosome or complement is unknown. So this photograph shows the FISH of various types, dual fusion, or we can see the fusion signal as orange color over here, and then we can have dual color, dual fusion FISH. We can see the BCR ABL fusion as well as the ABL BCR on the chromosome 9. Coming to PCR. PCR can detect different length products corresponding to the chimeric BCR-ABL proteins, which could be P190, 210 or 230 kilodalton, and PCR can be qualitative or it can be quantitative also. Quantitative PCR is emerging as an important testing modality in light of its role in monitoring response and minimal residual disease. Coming to the therapy in chronic myeloid leukemia, earlier used cytotoxic agents or interferon are no longer used nowadays. The most important treatment modality include the tyrosine kinase inhibitors. These are approved by their potency and activity against BCR-ABL1. These include the first, second, and third generation tyrosine kinase inhibitors, including imatinib, dasatinib, nilotinib, and ponatinib. So what is imatinib? It is an ABL-specific tyrosine kinase inhibitor that inhibits the proliferation of CML cells by inhibiting the kinase activity of BCR-ABL1. The newly diagnosed chronic phase patient is usually started with 400 mg per day orally of imatinib dose. Imatinib has a high frequency of hematological remission, high frequency of complete cytogenetic remission, and greater suppression of CML clone than the therapy with the previous kind of therapy such as interferon alpha. This is a diagram which is showing the mechanism of action of imatinib. This is the ATP binding site of this BCR-ABL, which has this tyrosine kinase activity, with the substrate having tyrosine residues are phosphorylated by this enzymatic activity, resulting in phosphorylation of the substrate and further subsequent steps resulting in the chronic myeloid leukemia. So what does the imatinib does? It binds to this site and prevents the phosphorylation of the tyrosine residues, and further substrate is not generated and no further steps in development of the leukemia occurs. So when the patient of CML comes in chronic phase, the first line is comprising of administration of tyrosine kinase inhibitors such as imatinib. There is no significant difference in overall survival of the patients who are treated with the first line imatinib versus a second line tyrosine kinase inhibitors if the patient is presenting in chronic phase. So in chronic phase, the first drug to be given is imatinib. Then if the patient is coming in accelerated or blast phase, then second generation of TKIs are preferred over imatinib. Dasatinib has shown a higher response rates and more durable responses in CML accelerated phase. So how do we assess the response of these tyrosine kinase inhibitors in the patient of CML patients? So we assess it on the parameters which are clinical, hematological, cytogenetic or molecular. So what is the complete hematological response? It is characterized by the total leukocyte normalization of all the blood counts with leukocyte count less than 10,000. Platelet count should be less than 450,000 and there should be no immature cells in the peripheral blood. There should be no sign and symptom of the disease and there should be disappearance of palpable splenomegaly. So what is partial hematological response? It is the same as CHR, but in addition what is allowed is presence of immature cells in the peripheral blood. Platelet count are reduced up to 50% of the pre-treatment count, but still they are more than 450,000. Persistent splenomegaly, but it is less than 50% of the pre-treatment extent. What is cytogenetic response? That is assessed on the basis of the presence of Philadelphia chromosome. So if the patient is pH negative, it is complete cytogenetic response. If the pH is between Philadelphia chromosome is between 1 to 35%, it is partial. Minor is between 36 to 65%. Minimal response is 66 to 95%, and there is no cytogenetic response if Philadelphia is more than 95%. The major cytogenetic response comprises of either partial or complete cytogenetic response. What is molecular response? That is assessed by PCR. There is complete molecular response where we have BCR-ABL transcript which is non-quantifiable and non-detectable. And what is major molecular response? It is more than or equal to 3-log reduction of BCR-ABL transcript mRNA or less than 0.1% of international scale BCR-ABL. So the objective of our therapy is first to achieve the complete hematological response. That is the first therapeutic objective. Then complete cytogenetic response followed by major molecular response. So how do we and when do we assess for these responses if the patient is receiving therapy or when the patient has presented? So first of all, the CHR is checked at the time of diagnosis. Then we have to assess again at 15 days until the CHR is achieved and confirmed subsequently every 3 months unless it is clinically indicated. Cytogenetic response we have to see at the time of diagnosis, then at the 3 and 6 months, then every 6 months until the complete cytogenetic response is achieved and confirmed. Subsequently 12 months if regular molecular monitoring cannot be guaranteed. Major molecular response is checked every 3 months until major molecular response has been achieved. Then at every 6 months it is performed. So also the response can be categorized as optimal, suboptimal, or failure. That depends on the achievement of hematological response, complete cytogenetic response, and according to the duration of the treatment. So if at the 3 months it is said to be optimal response if we have achieved the CHR. If it is less than CHR, then it is a failure. And at 6 months, if at least we have received partial cytogenetic response, it is an optimal response. But it is suboptimal if it is less than partial cytogenetic response, and failure if we have not reached any cytogenetic response. After 12 months, we should acquire complete cytogenetic response to call it as optimal response, and less than partial cytogenic response is called failure. Then at 18 months, we should at least acquire major molecular response to call it optimal response, and anything less than complete cytogenetic response is called as failure. Coming to the resistance to tyrosine kinase inhibitors, it is defined as failure to experience complete hematological response within 3 to 6 months, or absence of major cytogenetic response by 12 months, or progression of the disease after prior response. It could be primary resistance or a secondary resistance. Primary is defined as resistance to imatinib therapy with newly diagnosed, it is very rare in cases with the Ph positive CML, and secondary resistance is the reactivation of BCR-ABL activity, which mostly occurs by mutations in ABL tyrosine kinase domain of this BCR-ABL gene. Then the resistance can be BCR-ABL dependent or it could be independent. BCR-ABL dependent resistance is that there is reactivation of kinase activity of BCR-ABL1, or it could be independent, that is the mechanism of kinase activities following alternate growth or survival pathways, which is substituting this BCR-ABL kinase activity. So the mutations which have been observed include the point mutations in the imatinib resistance. One of them is T3-1I mutation at the gatekeeper position, or mutations in the ATP binding loop, or mutations in the activational loop. So the second or third line tyrosine kinase inhibitors are used in such situations, such as dasatinib and nilotinib, which has a greater potency. Ponatinib is used especially for the cases of T3-1I mutations. So what are the various BCR-ABL independent mechanisms? This includes activation of alternative signaling pathways such as MAP kinase, STAT5, PI3K, all have been associated with TKI resistance despite sustained inhibition of BCR-ABL1. So, but it is very challenging to target these pathways. So when the patient has, we are suspecting tyrosine kinase resistance in a patient, we have to make a careful evaluation of the patient. We have to see that whether the patient is compliant to the drug, what are the drug interactions, when the patient is on multiple medication. We have to assess and work up the various disease phases, mutation, BCR-ABL1 mutation status, karyotyping, additional clonal cytogenetic abnormalities in Philadelphia positive cells. Also, we need to consider administration of second line or third line tyrosine kinase inhibitors such as nilotinib or dasatinib, or lastly, stem cell transplant can be considered. So, understanding the various mechanisms of resistance to advanced TKIs such as ponatinib is very critical for developing effective therapeutic strategies in the cases which have tyrosine kinase inhibitors resistance.